nachdem jetzt dieser ganze Tag so erfüllt war von Inspiration, so viele tolle Ideen, wie New Work klappen kann und so viele tolle Beispiele, wo New Work ja auch schon tatsächlich zugegen ist und funktioniert, ja, kommt jetzt tatsächlich am Ende noch einer, der sagt, it's still a long way to New Work. Spielverderber oder was?
Ja, mal gucken.
Im Ernst. Nein, in Wirklichkeit ist er Realist, er ist absoluter Kenner der Materie und vor allem ist er Visionär.
And I switch to English now so that he has got a chance to understand what I'm saying. His German is actually quite all right, but I think it's better to start in English. Probably most of you guys know him already because you've seen his TED Talks. They're pretty famous, and I think the TED Talks, they belong to the TED Talks that have clicked best in the age of TED. This guy used to be a guitar player. He played in rock bands, hard rock bands, and suddenly, as a young guy, he had to take over the company of his father. Okay, what did he do 40 years ago? He was convinced that control was an illusion, he said, and that instead participation, individual responsibility, and profit sharing were good instruments to run the business 40 years ago. So, what did he do? He had 3,000 employees, so no small company. And he decided that all employees can determine their own salaries and working hours 40 years ago. His revolutionary approach was pretty successful because the company thrived. And what he did and what his thoughts about new work are, he will tell us now. He's one of the pioneers of new work. Please welcome, together with me, give a warm round and a big round of applause to Ricardo Semler.
Unabhängigkeit und Freiheit werden groß geschrieben bei den jungen Arbeitnehmern, weil sie diese einfach lieben. Also wie müssen die Jobs von morgen aussehen? Ricardo Semler erörtert das Problem.
Good afternoon. I'm supposed to be more entertaining than hip-hop, which is going to be a little bit difficult. My guru, Frédéric Laloux, is here to see me, so I reminded myself of a story that over the years, we had been trying all kinds of things because we were in the process of saying there must be a better way to do this than the classical way of running businesses and trying to drag people to work and so forth. And I remember I was in Belgium once. That's why I remember Laloux. I was there, and I was talking to people, and I was explaining the whole thing. And they said, but this, how does this work? Well, no, we do it like this, and this doesn't work. At the very end, like a good Belgian professor, he said, now I can see it works in practice, but will it work in theory? And I guess that's a lot of the problem that we've been running against all of these years. When you think about new work as we see it today, and we talk about, you know, this world is changing, people are asking for different things, we're ready for a new work. How are we avoiding that this new work, in the end, is not just another transition and another fad? Anyone who's of my age has gone through Kanban and quality circles, and now everyone's, and of course, balanced scorecard and Kaplan and this and that, Six Sigma. But now we're saying all it takes is Agile and Scrum, a little bit of Lean, and you'll be okay. But these are variations of the same thing. And the most dangerous assumption we have today, I think, is this, that to be modern, to think like a startup, to be young and so forth, is all about changing our mentality to something that is contemporary. So we say this, a new workplace is one where you paint the walls orange, you have a ping pong table, you bring your dog to work, and you have a tattoo on your neck. This is the explanation of the new business world, and there's something wrong with it. 98.2% of all young startups go broke. And it is on the basis of this failure of 98% that we are saying this is the solution. And I see companies, and I've been talking to companies, one in Germany with 200,000 employees that says, we want to think more like a startup. Do you? Should you? And so I think we have to start thinking a little bit, what does that mean? One thing that means to me is this: where are the 72-year-olds, the 64-year-olds, the 77-year-olds? Where are we looking for something that is entirely new because the format is faster? Is that really what we're looking for? Think about today, all of the problems that you have in your business, all the problems that you have in your family, all the issues you have in your life are in Shakespeare, right? You're going to find everything there. If you look yesterday they released, or they're releasing today, Carlos Ghosn of Renault in Japan. This is a story of intrigue. It's a story of passion. It's a story of jealousy. It's everything that you've ever seen. This human nature issue has not changed. I used to do a class for MBAs at MIT, and I used to use a case where I showed them a textile company that was a red brick building, very big brick building, and it had textile looms, had one operator per loom. Every 10 of these had a supervisor. Every 12 supervisors had a manager. It had a personnel department, a cafeteria. And of course, these kids were saying, so what? So what that this was in 1633? And this company and this Shakespeare and this 1633 have not changed dramatically. They've changed a little bit. We're able now to talk to somebody in China within a second, but essentially, we're saying the same thing. And so what kind of new workplace is ready for a change which is not cosmetic, which is not for the times, which is not to do with being modern? It is one, when you look at our history as people, it's one where we've gone from the age of the first revolutions, then of course the Industrial Revolution, then the revolution of knowledge, the information revolution, somewhat of a digital era, but we have yet to come to the era of wisdom. And wisdom is that what we're looking for in the workplace. Wisdom means I need to qualify and certify 67-year-olds to come in and work with these kids. I need to make a transaction. We are in an anthropological moment in our lives where people are every time older. There are no jobs for them. There are going to be less jobs for everyone. What these people who are 67 and 77 and 82 don't want to do is to get dragged through traffic for 1.5 hours, to sit in a boring building, to sit in an office, to sit in a meeting. Now, are they ready to contribute? Could they contribute dramatically if you gave them a translation to the digital world and a way in which they could come in and spend 20 minutes in a meeting with some 27 and 32-year-olds and think together and say, I'm looking for some experience, I'm looking for some wisdom, but I'm not looking for you to sit in a meeting all day. This is something we don't know how to do yet. Think about the way we recruit. The importance we still give to all kinds of issues about what kind of schooling we had, where we went back. I have two partners in Equity Partners. One is a woman who lives in the US, another one is a digital nomad. This digital nomad, for the first 1 year, I never met. I met after a year. I hadn't seen his face, as a matter of fact. And I don't know if you ask him, say, is he a biologist, an engineer? I don't know. I have an idea of how old he is, I'm not sure. And I know that he was Brazil's foremost, beach volleyball player. That I know. Now, the woman in the US I had seen online and so forth. Why is it still relevant? Why are we asking questions and looking at people's curriculum and seeing their background, etc.? So some 40 years ago, we started asking these questions, and we said, there must be a better way. We started with what we call a very simple ruler of 3 whys, which was our only rule there, was to ask a question 3 whys in a row. And everyone, my wife's here, we have 5 kids. Everyone who has kids knows that the first question the kid asks you is, why, Daddy, da-da-da-da? And you say, well, of course, because this. Oh, okay. Then they say, but why that? Well, that's a little bit more complicated. I'll explain to you later when you grow up. By the 3rd why, you have only one alternative, which is to buy them an ice cream quickly. And so, this 3 why applies to you too. Why am I going through an hour and a half of traffic? Why do I have headquarters? Why do I need people all in the same place? And you start answering like this. You say, no, but of course I need people to come in at the same time so that they can interact. Oh, but why do they come in and immediately send an email to somebody who's 3 meters away from them? And so the whole habit we have of the classical way of organizing these companies, we started asking some questions. Isn't there a different way? On the recruitment aspect, think about this. Recruitment as we know it in digital, internet recruiting and so forth, is a bit like internet dating. And so you can imagine, let's say, our Brazilian Gisele Bündchen, when you describe yourself, somehow you sound like Gisele Bündchen, or you sound like Tom Brady. But when you actually meet the person, there's a lot of disappointment. This is the same thing when you do it with a company. You try someone, you look through their past, you bring them up, you filter them, you bring them through a recruitment process. And we said, this is not going to work with the fundamental thing which we need in our new work, which is intuition. We don't want you to use your mind to go through the past and say, oh, they studied at the right places, they're right thing. I want you to use your intuition. So what we did was this. We said, what are you looking for? Anybody who thinks they need a leader, they need a boss, they need a new person, you call a meeting. And you call a meeting, you tell everybody where it's going to be at what time. 4 o'clock, room 601. Who shows up? Anybody who is interested. If no one shows up, it's not interesting. That's the first sign. And that boss you wanted, that person you needed, maybe is your problem alone. If too many people show up, you keep moving places until everyone fits. And then you say, okay, well, we need a new leader for this. All right, what do we need? Does the person have to have a background in accounting or marketing? No, not really, or yes, okay. Let's specify what it is. Okay, now, how many people are here? 12, okay. 1/12 of this is everybody's problem. Go out and let's look at a recruitment agency, or let's put an ad, or let's go through Zing and look for someone. Okay. Now, when I get my responses, we take this and we divide it by 12. And everybody keeps 1/12 of this. And with this 12th, you come back and you tell me the people that fit this criteria. You found 2, you found 4, okay. Once we do that, we say, here there are, there's 9. And then we say, okay, please invite the 9. So the 9 come in together, and we say, whoever is interested in interviewing these people, please show up. Again, if no one shows up, we have a sign. If too many people show up, we move the room. And then people sit there for 2-3 hours and talk, everybody together. Anybody asks questions, on and on. When it's finished, we say, please write down, just from your intuition, the name of the person you would hire. But please don't explain why. Just write down the name of the person you would hire. And that's how it's always been. The person is going to be in a leadership position. Every 6 months, they are evaluated, again, anonymously, by the people who work for them. They have to be approved by the people who are going to work for them in the beginning. And every 6 months, this changes because we all know that leadership is situational. But we keep people in place for a lot longer than we should. So this process does this kind of change. And we start thinking about issues like salary. So we say, what does it take to know whether someone's salary is right or wrong? There's 3 things that we know. We know how much people make inside the company, everybody else. We know how much people make somewhere else. And we know what we can afford, how much the company makes. But there are 2 things that only the other side knows, which is, where would I like to be at this point in my life? What's a television I would have liked to buy, or a car that I didn't buy? What's a house? What's a this? And 2, what is my spouse making? What are other colleagues making? What other reference and metrics do I have for salaries? Now, we need someone to have these 5 together to make the right decision. So either we try and get this from people, in which case we need about 220 Freudian psychologists at the company, or we give them the other 3. And we say, here's what everyone makes, here's what everyone makes somewhere else, and here's what we can afford. Now you have the other 2, you tell me what the salary should be. Now this has been in place for over 30 years. And you say your first reaction, our first reaction is against human nature. It's not a leap of faith and that we believe in human nature. We say, Nah, but they're going to abuse it, they're going to increase their salary, etc. The whole rationale of how we do this together, the synergy we're looking for to do this together, is very simple. Every 6 months, we ask people, whoever is working together, to put together a budget, and we ask them to do it for 6 months. And people were always saying, but wait a second, I'm accustomed to doing this on a yearly basis, I think on a calendar yearly basis, and so forth. And I said, I am sure, in our case, and I'm sure in your case, that in your one-year budget, all the good things are going to happen in the second half. And so we said, cut out the second half, and tell me now what you would do if you could only look 6 months ahead, which is the maximum we can really look at. And so we started a rolling 6-month budget, which has been in place now for 40 years. And we say, think about the future, all you want, but don't write it down. Just write down what you can do for 6 months. And when you start thinking about, well, but you want them to maximize shareholder value and to have a cohesive set of metrics that we like and so forth. When you think about it and you put some people together in a business situation, and you say, how much return should you be getting out of this business as a shareholder or whatever? Anybody who is making 2, 3, 4% a year, you turn around to your employees and say, will you give me 1,000 euros at 4% a year? And they say, but the bank gives me 3, 4, why the hell would I run all of this risk? You're right. That's our case too, and that's every shareholder's case, every bank's case. So you can't make 3, 4% on a continuous basis, because then it's better just keeping your money in the bank with almost no risk. Anybody who's making 18, 20% a year is either in cocaine or brothels. These are the two businesses that have that kind of a return. Everything else is 8, 6, it's very boring. 7, 9.2, 5.8, that's all. So when you ask people and you say, put together a budget for 6 months, that's what they're going to find. Because it's not possible to make much higher. It's not interesting for anybody to make much less. So you don't have to ask people anything. You just put them in a room and say what it is you want to do. And that's where people start asking questions like, but wait, where am I putting together with this the issues of purpose and meaning and so forth, which I think is another issue that is very overrated. I think when you say, let's find a way to make everybody's purpose in life coincide with ours, it's not very difficult. If you're a pharma company, you say, do you want to feel like you're saving people from dying of cancer? Yeah, why not? Who's going to say, no, I like to see the more people die of cancer, the happier I am. So people will say yes. You say, you want to work for Nestlé because you are feeding the world. Sure, I want to work for Nestlé. The fact is that it's not difficult to design something that says that everybody's meaning is aligned. But when you think about the purpose of some of these people, the fact is that a lot of people want to come to work, make the money that they're making, go back home, and do something else because their real purpose is not there. And that's perfectly all right. And this is difficult for us to accept. When we think even about the cut of the people that are in a company, I would say, depending on your view of humanity, let's say you conclude that 7% of humanity is lazy. I would say 7% of your company has to be lazy. Otherwise, this microcosm doesn't work. Otherwise, this set of human nature that you're trying to make into an organizational mode will not work. If you over-select and you're looking for the best and the brightest and the most energetic, etc., that is a very sick company. It'll last for a while. You looked in the 80s in the investment banking world. For a time, there was in the car world. This has existed. When you think about how this works over time and how much change companies are willing and are able to enact, you come to a very interesting paradox. I'll give you one example. Now I mentioned the car business. The car business, when you think about one example, is very interesting. And that example is parallel parking. It's something we all do. Parallel parking essentially is driving past the place you want to be and then driving diagonally backwards. I've been doing it for 40-something years, and I never know how it's going to turn out. So it's not something that you can do easily. It's not anything that any of us do well. Now you think about this. You say, after 30-something billion dollars in R&D. After companies, a car that existed for 100-something years in the mode that we know it. How come no one has solved the issue of parallel parking? And I would say to you, look, I know you have a flight. You have to take a train to Berlin, or you have to go back to Munich, but stay with me until tomorrow morning and give me 2 hours of your time. Let's just solve this problem forever. Do you think we can't, if we divide ourselves in little groups and come back, we can't solve a problem where we say we go here, the 4 wheels turn this way, the car moves in, you unlock the 4 and you get out? You think we can't solve it by tomorrow morning? Now, in 100 years of automobile, it's not enough to do it. But the most interesting part is, neither can Tesla do it. So you haven't been in the automobile business ever. You're going to design something completely new, but it doesn't parallel park. Actually, we were in one of these days. The doors go like this and like that. There's tremendous things, but it doesn't do parallel parking. Why doesn't it do parallel parking? Because the mindset that is in that industry has been there forever, has been emulated, and is being emulated by everyone who comes into that business. And so new work is not about finding an agile way of not solving the parallel parking problem. So the essence of what we're trying to do is very, very difficult. It's not done by us changing the format or the form of what we're doing. And I think that that's something that we need to think about. So we're caught up in this. And as a company, of course, we went places with this 6-monthly budget, every 6 months, of course, you have to remember something else, and this connects with the salary issue, which is every 6 months, the people who are in a given area, business, department, whatever, they write down the names of the people that they want for the next 6 months. And if you're not on anyone's list, that's a problem. And so if you're right, which you might be, that you should be making twice as much, you can't make it there anymore because these people don't agree. Either they don't agree that you're worth twice as much, or they do agree, but they don't have the money. They can't afford it. And so we started developing. We had 11 different ways to get paid. One of them was a salary. Another one was a commission. But then we had royalty over top line, royalty over EBIT, milestones over development, R&D bonuses, and so forth. So we found different ways. At one point, when we had about almost 5,000 actually people that were employees, we had 12,000 people who were not. And of these 12,000 people, we had 121 people who worked for us and for our competitor. Some in marketing, some in accounting, etc. So a lot of what we have in our minds is stuff that we scare ourselves with. We think we're still in a world in which there is privacy, even though we have all the signs in the world that it's gone. And we think that we can protect our data, that we can, and that if we know a certain secret sauce of something we do, the competitor will be kept away. It's just not true anymore. When your competitor is not doing something, you look at the smartphone business, you look at the car business, you look at telecom business, everywhere you go, the competition is completely irrelevant of the question of secret. They need to come at this from a completely different angle, like the parallel parking, and that's very difficult to do. So what I want to leave you with, I think, is the idea that there is a format of giving up these obstacles, giving up all of these obstructions that we've created, which are unnecessary. We don't need to know how many hours someone worked. We should be able to contract with someone for a given result. And I'll tell you more. We had, for example, manufacturing businesses where we used to say to the people this: look, what are you going to do? You're going to sell this? Yeah. How many are you going to sell? We said, here, 112 per week. Okay. If you sold 112 by Wednesday, please go to the beach. Because if you sell more, you create an immense problem for engineering, for manufacturing, for the stock, for the inventory. Soon we start going places. Soon we start buying another company. And we don't know if any of this is what we want to do. We don't know if any of this is sustainable over time. So please do your little thing, contract whatever it is you're going to do, and then stop. And this is very hard for people to understand. So we had I was remembering one of the times I was here in Hamburg, we had a partner in Kiel. And in Kiel, we had a company called HDW, Howaldtswerke Deutsche Werft. And we used to go to HDW, and there we used to make these very complicated axles and propellers for ships. And so we used to do it with them and so forth. And we used to have a guy in the building. I was 19 or 20, and I used to go up the stairs. And every time I went up the stairs, I saw that he was reading the paper. And it took me a long time for me to see his face because he was always reading the paper. I went up and I said, "Who's that guy?" "Oh, that's Rubin, who works with HDW in Kiel." And I said, "What does he do?" "Oh, he's an engineer. He's specialized in emergency situations with pumps and propellers at high sea." And what does that mean? No, whenever there's a ship is in the Arctic and something froze on the gasket and so forth, it's a very difficult thing. They send a telegraph, the telegraph goes to telegram, it comes to him, he solves it, it goes back. And we've tried everything to make him productive. We've tried to make him a manager, to give him, he doesn't want anything. So once or twice a week, he solves one of the problems. The rest of the time, he reads the paper. This was an extraordinary eye-opening moment for me, and I said, why are we keeping these people here? Why do we want to know how many hours they work? This is his talent, but please let him go home. No, he can't go home, he has to read the paper here. So this rationale, which we have still in our minds, we have in our companies, we have even in our young companies. We now, for example, nomad, digital people who are moving around the world all the time, are starting to prove, of course, that this can be done at a distance. A new problem is starting to show up, which is the problem of how do you put together a certain loneliness of remote work, the fact that you want a certain synergy between people, which is hard to get if the person is far away. We were doing now, 15 years ago, we were doing something called blind recruitment. Blind recruitment was where we would put out jobs on a digital base for people to task. They would take it, etc. But we were blind to who they were. So we didn't know age, gender, geography, nothing of the sort. Just we had a rating of that person, and that rating was good or bad. And it was 92 or it was 88, but we had no idea what that person was, where they were, and so forth. This process was taking us to places where we started looking at new ways of evaluating who we really are. And one of the things we do to ourselves constantly is that we have this fraudulent view. We accept and we foster a fraudulent view of who we are. We have our NPS system for customer satisfaction. We have these surveys which HR develops internally. We have a lot of yes people who are saying, great, we're going great in this. We have company videos, and we're tricking ourselves a lot of the time. So we started some work here with our Dutch partners in Holland at SSI with something called 720. 720 was a version of the 360 that had 3 pillars. One, you have the ones that we know. NPS, employee satisfaction, and so forth. The second one is where you ask former employees, former clients, and former suppliers what they really think of the company. And you give some weight to that. And the third one is you go to Glassdoor, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth, and pick up from algorithms what people really think of the company. And you put this all together, it's a very surprising picture. It's nothing like you thought your company was. And so the whole process of trying to fix this slowly is the one that has to do with new work. And the whole format, I think, that I wanted to propose that you think about in general is we are going into a world that is not trying to be modern for a while. It's not trying for a fad. It's not trying just to find people with tattoos. We're looking for something that requires putting tribal knowledge anthropologically back into the workplace and removing absolutely any of the things that said, why are you doing this? Why are they making that? How come he's making more than me? Where do I park? There's no time left for this. Things are moving very quickly. We need to take everything that is a boarding school aspect, everything that's classical business out of the way and start realizing that this new work, this new format is already existent long time ago and is in us from an era of wisdom that we haven't reached yet, but hopefully we will. And I want to leave with you the idea and the hope that you'll be able to do the same thing yourselves. And find that as you ask these 3 whys in a row, as you test every one of these issues, I think you'll find that there's a much better world out there for the company and for yourselves as well. Vielen Dank.